Welcome back to another episode of the All Tense Podcast. I'm your co-host, Josh West, here with Clay Harris. We're continuing a series talking about the complicated landscape and environment a lot of our clients and prospects find themselves in. And today, we want to focus about one thing and one thing only, and it's money. Everybody's worried about cash, Clay. And specifically, I just want to address up front, when we're talking about access to capital and funding the business, certainly the rates have been high for quite a while. That persists. 80% of small business applicants find that process challenging. We are not discussing that in this podcast. Clay and I do not work at banks. We are not lenders. Rather, we're going to talk about some very practical things that we're seeing inside of the business and how the leaders can be proactive in addressing cash. Clay, what you got for us?
You know, my favorite way to access capital? My bank account.
Indeed.
I think Christopher Wallace said mo money, mo problems, but also no money equals mo problems, right?
You got it.
When we talk about this if I'm a business owner right now, we're worried. We're worried because we're just unsure about what the future looks like. And in a previous episode, we talked about anxiety is normal. It's fine to feel anxiety when things are uncertain.
Sure.
Then you got to start separating facts from fiction and work with facts, right? And so for me, when I hear a business owner say, I'm worried about how I'm going to pay for stuff. I'm worried about how this business is running in 3 months if half my clients go away. The question is not, okay, well, let's worry about that in 3 months. The question is, what are we going to do now that's either going to prevent that from happening, or if we don't know that answer, what are we going to start paying attention to better now than we ever have before? Because that impediment, we can see it through the windshield now, right? And so if you're a business owner worried about cash flow right now, the number one thing that you have to do is get a real grounding in what's true, and then keep an eye on it. When you're sick and you're worried about staying alive, they hook you up to a bunch of monitors to keep an eye on your pulse ox and your heart rate and your blood pressure and all those sorts of things. If you don't know what those metrics are for your business, there's no better time than right now to start paying attention to the right things. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And Clay, for our listeners out there, we keep track of metrics in a scorecard, and this is something that's looked at weekly, right? So you mentioned, like, what are those most important metrics? And, a lot of times people say, well, what makes for a great scorecard? How do we get there? And, everything is intertwined and connected in our worlds. And I always back the team up to the accountability chart and role clarity within that. And then I start by saying, well, what makes for a great week? When you're sitting in that seat, what makes for a great week? And then what do we need to measure to make sure that we can achieve that great week? And, what we're really talking about is activity-based leading indicators that help us achieve that great week, make us better predictors that we're going to get there, minimizing those surprises along the way. What have you found in working with leadership teams and creating that scorecard and that discipline of keeping an objective pulse on what's happening?
The hardest thing they do. Figuring out why, because they don't know. And so I'm actually going to cheat. I'm going to go to the EOS book that just came out, the data book, and they have a chapter on scorecards. So if you're listening and you're thinking, I don't know what would be on my scorecard, I'm going to read you. This is on page 56. 5 things that you want to track on the scorecard. Getting something related to getting new customers, something related to getting additional orders from those customers, something related to them being happy, something related to clients being profitable, and something related to your cash stance. If those 5 things are happening, you're getting clients, they're putting in more orders, they're happy, you're making sure that you're servicing them in a profitable way, and that you're managing the cash in the business, start there. It might be one one scorecard item for each of those. It might be three, whatever it is. Those are the bases that you want to cover. But I think, Josh, that last one is the one that we're talking about. Generate, generate/have cash. When we talk with business owners about that, my guess would be that most of the founders understand how their company generates cash. Most of the people who've been there from day one because they started when the bank account said zero, right? Most of the founders that I work with understand cash, but sometimes the leadership team has a really widely varying understanding of how the company generates cash flow. And we have a really specific tool in EOS called 8 cash flow drivers that helps the leadership team get on the same page around how the company generates cash and how it spends cash. Yeah?
Absolutely. And when we talk about that tool in particular, really what we're asking the team to brainstorm on is 3 things. How do we increase revenue? How do we decrease expenses? And then ultimately, how do we increase cash, right? Because as you said, financial literacy varies throughout the organization. Revenue, profit, and cash flow are all very different things. And so I also start to relate that to the major functions that we talk about across the organization. So in terms of increasing revenue, we're usually going to look to those sales and marketing leaders within the organization. And, how are we getting more business? And to keep it simple, and particularly in some of these uncertain or trying times, my recommendation is start with your best customers. Focus there. Like, why did they buy from you? What made them great? Can you sell more to them? Can you get referrals from them, et cetera, rather than the more expensive, uh, tactics that we can take in terms of generating new business out in the world. That's a great place to start. From the operations side of things, that's where I look for us to really decrease those expenses. A lot of times it's not as direct as going and getting new sales and revenue or looking to the finance department, which we'll get to in a moment. But this could be related to your processes getting tightened up. You could be running a little inefficient in some places. And so it may not come wrapped in dollar signs, but it's worth a look there. And then finally, when we look to the finance department to increase that cash, and a basic place to start is with accounts receivable, right? So whatever terms you've given your business, a good metric for the scorecard, let's come back to that in terms of what's outstanding beyond terms. And if you show up in your leadership team meetings and those level 10s week over week, and you're looking at that particular scorecard measurable, and those receivables continue to climb, that's an issue that you need to tackle, because here again, you've already invested all the time and the capital and the resources to get that customer, go out, deliver that product or service, and now we're at the goal line and we simply haven't collected. So that is a great place to start here as well. What are you doing in session with your clients, Clay?
The same thing. Like, they've got to understand all that. The bridge that I'm trying to the gap that I'm trying to cross with leadership teams generally is having them be in alignment. And like, in the shocking turn of events, this is all we're trying to do all the time in the session room, whether it's around the VTO, accountability chart, whatever, is that when you're worried about cash, the most important thing is that the people leading the company are in agreement around what we're going to do, what the current set of circumstances are, what the pitfalls are, and what we're going to do to get around them. The alignment is the thing. You might do it differently than company A is a little bit different than company B. Look, company C is way different. Company F is doing their own thing off in the corner. Cool. As long as the leadership teams of those individual companies are in agreement about what our plans are, whether it goes well or whether it goes south, then you'll execute well. If you aren't in agreement, then it's chaos and confusion. So alignment is the key. Cash flow drivers, great tool. The purpose is to identify, make better, increase revenue, reduce costs, all those sorts of things, 100%. But the extra oomph on that is that everyone agrees what those things are. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because, and for our clients that have worked through this tool, there's lots of suggestions, but the conclusion of that is to choose those that we're going to focus on, right?
Right.
We've we've got one butt and we're not going to ride 10 horses with it. And so it's the conclusion of that tool is getting you to that alignment. That's a great point, Clay. Do you have any further nuggets for our listeners?
I have no nuggets because there's no more nuggets needed after you hear someone say you have one butt and we can't ride 10 horses. I think that's perfect.
All right. We'll take them home, Clay.
We're really so appreciative for everyone listening. My name is Clay Harris. I'm in North Carolina. His name is Josh West. He's in Arizona. We love EOS and we love you. We call this the All Tens podcast because we rate every meeting that we participate in on a scale of 1 to 10, and we're always hoping for a 10. But the more important part is that everyone rates. So we'd love for you to rate the podcast wherever you're listening. Give us any feedback. Give us ideas for future episodes. We'd love to meet you where you're at. Until then, thanks for listening. Josh, good talking to you.
All tens all the time, Clay.
Bye.
Bye.